I'm Mike Boyd, Boyd Group International, and welcome to Aviation Unscripted. Thank you again for joining us. We appreciate your time. Yesterday was the first edition of Boyd Swellbar Unvarnished. It's going to be a new video channel that we're putting out. Basically, a discussion between Bill and I, and later on some other people that we have a great deal of respect for, about what's going on in aviation. For those of you who saw it, it's still up on our Rumble channel, which is Boyd Swellbar. Pull it up. We go into areas that other people don't want to touch, and we say things, very honestly, that a lot of people don't want to say, even though they know they're quite accurate. See, I maintain right now today, aviation planning is a process that's sort of like trying to rebuild the town before the tornado leaves. You know, it's still bubbling around here. We're trying to get a feel for what's left and what's not left, and whether it's even worth rebuilding the place. And that kind of uncertainty has led to a lot of, I think, very poor planning, very poor assessments of what's going on in air transportation today. You know, we have changes in fleets, we have changes in airline strategies. And if you'll pull up Boyd Swellbar Unvarnished on our Rumble channel, you'll see how Bill and I kind of knocked around some ideas. Now, this was our first episode of it, and we've talked about it for a couple of months about how we're going to do it. And it's a little bit rough in terms of production. As I've said, we really wanted, Otto Preminger to help direct us, but I think he's dead. So we had to do it on our own. We couldn't get a good Hollywood director in here to do that, and nor will we. But if you haven't pulled down Boyd Swellbar on our Rumble channel, do that, take a look, and let us know your feedback, because we're saying things and implying things and making prognostications that many people in the industry might find a little bit threatening to the rice bowl. But again, that's how we got where we got. And again, if you haven't pulled it down, we sure would appreciate it if you would, and give us your feedback. Now, what I want to talk about today is the changes in air transportation in America and where that's going to manifest. Take a look at this chart. This is our latest Airports USA chart. What it shows is 2022 is still going to be roughly 100 million fewer enplaned passengers than we saw in 2019. What does that mean? Does that mean 100 and whatever million passengers are staying home? No. It simply means we have that much less traffic through our airports. Now, this hasn't been brought up, and Bill and I brought it up yesterday, and we'll be bringing it up in the future. But what does that mean to airport planning? This is one of the things I just don't get, and maybe I hit a little too hard on it. Sorry if I do, and if I've offended anybody with it, that's just too damn bad, because what I see happening in terms of airport planning, and particularly air service planning, is it's sort of like trying to sell vacuum tubes to a world that now only uses flat screen TVs. It just doesn't work. But when we're going to be looking at this many fewer people getting on airplanes, what's the impact at airports? It's going to be the same. No, it's not. I mean, concessions, and Bill brings this up, and if you look at our unvarnished video, who's going to work there? What it says is maybe a lot of these concessions that are so exciting, like foot massages and wine bars and things like that, they might not be at airports anymore, only because there's no one who wants to work them. If they can't work them, that means that revenue is going to drop along with the revenue of lost volume. What are we dancing around this for? Airports' revenue streams are going to change dramatically. That's also going to change how people use airports, but more importantly, it's all going to change how much airports are going to cost to airlines. Now, there's some very forward-thinking airports out there, like Helena, Montana. They're waiving airport fees for the month of January, simply to tell the airline industry, look, we care about you. We all are in this together. Whatever we can do to make things work, that's great. But there's other airport systems out there that are heavily, heavily dependent upon concession revenue that may not be there in the future. Those are things that we have to start to think about. That's why I say, maybe instead of having an air service development director, you need a strategic planning director under which air service development would be a part. In other words, the great opportunity now for airports around the country is to look at your ALP. What is on that ALP? What does it represent? What kind of opportunities might be there within your region, within your role in aviation, in your geographic location? Remember, a lot of things are happening in aviation today. You take a look at Buy Aerospace here in Denver with their light single engine, and I think they're going to have multi-engine electric airplanes. Now, in a lot of ways, there's some huge opportunities with that, and in a lot of ways, that's going to change things. How about 100 low lead? Nobody wants to talk about that, but that's going away. You got people on the warpath, they hear the word lead and they go nuts. And I could argue with that one way or the other. All I know is that's the direction it's going. How are you going to replace that revenue stream? And that revenue stream also supports airplanes that probably can't be modified for MOGAS. What does that do for your T-hanger? What does that do for your FBO support? Those are things that you need an economic strategic director that knows the airport and airline business and aviation business should be the number 2 person at virtually any small or mid-size airport, or maybe even the number 1 person should be that person. We're looking at those sorts of things for the future, and we're trying to understand how so many people can be so myopic not to see that and assume that we're just going to go back to where we were in 2019. It's not going to go back to that. It was evolving away from that anyway, but it was evolving incrementally. These shutdowns, due to the gift that keeps on giving from Wuhan, and that's where it came from, is changed just how people think. One of the examples I've made in a couple of these is you take Scranton. When Delta was there were about 12,000 people, O&D, between there and Atlanta. Delta leaves, those passengers have evaporated. A number of communities we're working with, they say, give us a leakage study. I can give you an opportunity study because you haven't leaked any passengers since this mess started in 2020. You've lost passengers, and the question is, how can you recapture those, and where can you recapture those? And yeah, we got a little bit harsh on our unvarnished video with things like speed date meetings, and they should be. To be very blunt today, I've been to a couple of those, and they're a ball, they're wonderful, they're great, you meet people, but the core meeting of 20 minutes with an airport, that can now be done far more cost effectively, I think business effectively, using Teams or using Zoom or one of those other systems where you go there, you get it done, you save money doing it, and you get more effectiveness for a next step. Those are the things we wanted to look at. So I guess what we're talking about here is, where is America going? Let me show you this chart. This is right now the fastest growth airports we see between 2019 and 2025, going like this. And we're looking at reasons why. And again, Airports USA, which we'll talk about in a second, is the only program out there, it's the only system out there that delivers forecasting as well as historic data for 168 airports across the country. We're talking year by year, and our short-term forecast goes out 12 to 14 months where we see specific things happening at each of those airports. And our subscribers get that. And it's not something that's, it's an FAA document, it's done once every spring. It's modified throughout the year, and our online subscribers get it whenever they want it. They can pull it up, they can compare things. But if you take a look at that chart, there are major changes in terms of what we thought it would be, because the air transportation system is changing and consumers are changing. Remember, we believe that leisure transportation has in many ways moved out of the discretionary spend category and into, in some cases, a must-spend category, because people are fed up with being locked in their houses or locked in their communities. People are fed up with some of the constrictions on how they can fly or where they can fly, and people want to go places. That's going to be huge. And also with that, we've talked a little bit about, separate from this, the issue of international travel. I certainly hope some of these airlines who are looking at that regrowing are right. I don't think that's going to happen. We've told you about China, dead as a doornail, and it's going to remain that. I mean, Delta even did a mid-flight turnaround because they found out the airplane is going to go to Shanghai, have to sit there and get cleaned, and it won't just be the 409 being spread around. The airlines are going to get cleaned up by the clowns doing it. That's dead. But even Europe, who wants to go to Europe and take a vacation when they're not sure if they can get out of town? Some dear friends of ours, recently they were over in Ireland visiting family. And one of them had to stay there an extra 2 weeks because he had no symptoms but tested positive for the gift that keeps on giving, COVID-19. Those kinds of things are going to stop people from traveling outside of the U.S. And one reason Florida is booming is it's not viewed as the place that has some draconian idiot governors who aren't doctors but play one on TV. We look at those sorts of things. And with Airports USA, we look at all kinds of airports. We have hub site airports. We have large non-hub site airports, like, for example, Tampa, Austin. They're not hubs, but they're huge airports, and they're growing airports. And in the case of an Austin, which 25 years ago was smaller than San Antonio, is now 40% bigger, there are reasons, and that's what Airports USA gets into. Now, we've done this for, 30 years now, and we're very good at forecasting. And if you have not seen it, log on to airportsusa.com and take a look at subscribing to this system. Because when you do, you will have at your fingertips forecasts not only for your own airport or airports you want to look at, but for all 168 airports. Actually, Bill here tells me now we've expanded it to 175, but I don't want to go in and change those websites from 168 to 175, so we'll just sit with 168. So if you haven't pulled it down, do pull it down. Take a look at Airports USA. Take a look at the forecasts that are there. We have some easily pulled down forecasts just for the public that shows you the kinds of analyses that we do. Nobody else is doing it. Nobody else has a source that gives you enplanements from 2003 up through forecast enplanements at 2030. No one else has that. And by the way, the data for the airports is not from DOT. The data from the airports is directly from the airports, which is a whole lot more accurate than pulling down DOT data, T100 data, or whatever. This is more accurate. So take a look at it, and we'd love to talk to you about it. It's airportsusa.com. It will be, we believe it's a tool that no airport planner and no financial planner should be without. Because if you want to check, you want to tell your board how fast your airport is growing or not growing compared to other airports in the country, instantaneous analyses right there on the screen. Anyway, if you're interested in that, pull on airportsusa.com, give it a check. And also, if you haven't done it, Boyd Swellbar, that's our Rumble channel. Pull down our latest video, our first video. Let us know your thoughts, because we're going to be getting into things over the next several weeks that are probably going to rattle a few cages, only because some cages need to be rattled and some rice bowls need to be broke. With that, I want to thank you for joining us. We look forward to working with you. If you need any consulting, forecasting, research, we're here. Have a good week.